Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jessica Lindl, author of The Career Game Loop, and I'm very excited to have with us today Kevin Truong and Anuja Dharkar. I've had the pleasure of working with the two of them over the course of my career here at Unity, and nobody brings to the table more how you can really drive innovation for your organization and for yourself personally through job crafting. So that is what we're going to cover in today's conversation. Just a quick introduction on Kevin. Kevin leads all of our social impact work, our partnerships, and our corporate giving. A lot of those partnerships we've highlighted in the Career Game Loop book. So Kevin's intimately familiar with their journeys and the journeys of many of our creators. Anuja leads our entire learn and education strategy globally. So she's responsible for upskilling the millions of creators that we've been able to achieve over the course of the almost decade that we've been able to work together, including also all of the alternative pathways. So welcome, Anuja and Kevin. Really excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we're gonna dive in, and we're gonna either ask you both questions or ask you individual questions. So we'll kick off our first question for both of you. So as you both know personally in your own careers and for people and teams that you've managed, that job crafting really involves finding ways to innovate, not just in the role itself, but innovating within your team structure as somebody's role may change, or innovating actually across the company. So I would love it, Anuja, if you would just kick off and help us understand a story from you managing or your own personal story on how you've seen it drive innovation.
Yeah, thank you. So I think a lot of people have many different skills and hobbies, in fact, things that they may or may not bring to their jobs on a day-to-day basis. And one particular story that really stands out to me that has evolved the role and career of somebody on my team has been around that started out as just something to solve a small problem. We had a database of skills that we needed to keep track of, and it was starting to become larger and larger. And what this person did is she decided to put it into a tool that would help her track it, and soon started learning this tool deeper and deeper to understand how to bring links between each of those skills so that they could be stacked. At the end of this, she realized that she had learned enough about this tool to actually turn it into a database, even though she was not a database programmer or had any education or background in databases. And what it led us to look at as a company then was there are these skills that people are getting, whether they're learning or whether they're using our product. And how do we actually connect the dots so everyone's speaking the same language? And what her work, which was started out as solving a small problem she personally had in managing her work, turned into something bigger as she started talking about it to others across the company. That led us to think about taxonomy in our skills and how that really moves across the products that we're building, the features that we have within those products, how people actually use them, and what they need to know to learn them. That has changed her entire perspective from being someone who is developing content tied to these skills to someone who's actually architecting our content strategy and working with individuals across this company in product and content to unify how we think about this and how we really consider what people need to know. It was really fantastic to see that growth, and it came out of something that was truly personal for her.
Yeah, it sounded like you had empowered her to just focus on solving problems and whatever her job description was. And then by solving that specific problem, it ended up unlocking a huge benefit for the entire company, not just for what you needed in her job or on your team.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think having the space to be able to solve problems in any way you want, but also being able to recognize when she had sort of shifted what she was doing to something bigger, that it wasn't just solving her problem, that it actually had this ability to do more for the company, being able to help her elevate her work and make others aware of it, because nobody would have really seen what she was working on unless we talked about it to others. And so being able to help her elevate that really helped her shift what her role was and give her the opportunity to think about, does she want to move into this role now that is actually a little more visible, more pivotal to the company than the work she'd been doing before. And it was a great way for her also to sort of shift from having to do one job for a long period of time, but bring in things that interest her and can sort of steer her in different directions.
So just to confirm, what was the title of her job before she did this, and what's her job title now? Or not now, but after she had done the transition?
So her job title was instructional designer, and her main work was creating content. Her job now is information architect, and her work is really more focused on trying to integrate the skills across multiple teams throughout the company and unify them on this one taxonomy and getting it built into multiple products as well.
Wow, that's incredible. A big transformation.
Yes.
Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I have a personal story. So I feel like the idea of job crafting really defines my entire career. I used to work for many years as a college and career advisor at local high schools in Seattle. And I was tasked with really helping like juniors and seniors apply to college, feel motivated to go to college. But I knew that I wanted to do much more than that. I wanted to help more students and eventually step into leadership roles. But at the time, I didn't really quite know how. I didn't know how everything would connect in my future. But I started taking initiative by creating after school programs that never existed, creating new events for the entire school and doing mock application workshops for numerous schools as well. And I started really focusing on like train the trainer models to also inspire other college and career advisors that I was working with through my nonprofit to help job craft for in their roles as well. And that was something I was excited about because it would then later inspire me to go into nonprofit leadership roles. I realized I didn't, instead of becoming like a high school counselor, I could uh, use my leadership experience to influence systemic level changes. And that was something I was really excited about in aligning my skill building and my overall vision for the type of impact I wanted to make.
I mean, you had a lot of initiative to start your own organization and then to completely job craft into a totally different type of role and almost industry in a sense. What advice do you have for young people today? Because you did this, how old were you when you did the nonprofit?
I was 23 years old. So after undergrad, I took a year to serve as an AmeriCorps member, being a full-time college and career advisor. And I wasn't able to find like employment opportunities, even with my 5+ years of advising. And I really wanted to go into like nonprofit leadership space. And so this aligns with the advice I'm about to give was, what can I do to shape my career and go pursue nonprofit leadership? So I thought if the opportunity didn't come to me, I will create it from scratch. And so I created my own college access nonprofit organization at 23 years old. At the same time, I entered graduate school to study nonprofit management and philanthropy. And it was at the time a very like ambitious and almost insane endeavor to pursue at the same time. I felt like I was working 60, 80 hours a week. But I had that vision in mind that it would all pay off. And like ultimately, like I have to say that it did. It allowed me to gain the invaluable experiences and connections that really paved the way for the rest of my career.
That's so exciting and also daunting because I imagine you didn't have clarity on your own cash flow when you decided to do this. So, how did you sort of manage the bridge between what AmeriCorps ended? And I imagine you had to fundraise for the nonprofit
Yes.
to pay for your own salary and anybody else's. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, it was significant. Yeah, from AmeriCorps, which I was making probably close to $4 an hour, to fundraising from really bootstrapping. So I raised funds through just my peer network, friends, family, and then through grants. So I had to learn a lot of new skills quickly. I did not know anything about grant writing when I first started the nonprofit. I was very much in direct service, helping students directly, and so that was a completely new skill set for me. But I was able to quickly learn, and I was fortunate. I felt like something that was right and in the right direction for me was that Seattle was such a tech hub and also a philanthropic hub with some of the largest funders in our backyard. That I was able to quickly win some local grants that then snowballed into larger and larger grants. And I was able to also work through graduate school positions that actually aligned. I was really fortunate. I started working for the Office of Admissions at the University of Washington, where I attended. And so I, again, was running a college access organization. So it all played out quite nicely that I had a side income to pursue my passions, but the insight I was gaining while working for the Office of Admissions actually became the key to my success in running a nonprofit in that focus that had a lot of credibility. So a lot of people started coming to me. Program's popularity skyrocketed because they knew that the founder and director had a direct pulse into the Office of Admissions for the largest public institution, post-secondary institution in Washington State.
I think what I'm hearing is even if you feel like you've just got to get a job to pay the bills, that job can actually be really relevant to what it is that you want to do next and what you want to create if you're choosing correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And it was a mix. I felt like majority of it was tactfully curated. I sort of knew how to connect the dots in hindsight, and some of it was a little bit of luck in the mix. But I think job crafting, I always knew that I wanted to play off my education experience in different angles. So from direct service to uh, managing my own nonprofit to then wanting to understand what is it like on the other side of the table. From so instead of writing grants, I wanted to understand how grant making works, and so that was where I decided to pivot over to philanthropy and get the full 360 experience. And I felt like that really polished my professional toolkit and also helped me find leadership opportunities and additional credibility in the industry.
Thank you so much. It's an inspiring story. Anusha, I know that job crafting doesn't mean you're just changing a role. It means that you have to completely reshape a work environment. So what strategies have you implemented to reshape your team or your work environment?
Say so job crafting can be intentional or it could be unintentional that falls out of a need that you have. And part of it is also dictated by the people that you have around you, the people that and the skills that they have or the skills that they want to be using. Many times having a team that's going to be high performing or also enjoying the work that they do is about blending not only what the team and the company needs, but also what those people are really good at or really interested in that motivates them to continue to work. And so, one specific example that I remember as we've evolved here at Unity and in how we've been focusing and where the needs have been for the company and how we think about um, the value that we can provide for our users, as well as how that can help Unity long term. I think often about one person in particular who was in a role that was important to the work that we were doing, but the work that he was doing was fine, not necessarily as great as it could be. And in having a conversation with him to understand what interests he had and what motivated him to come to work every day or what value or problems there were that he felt he could solve, made me realize that there was actually an untapped area that we were trying to solve in terms of a problem with another group of people on our team that he should actually be involved with. And so we were trying to help make sure that all of our users could get access to our technology easily and quickly. And we were having challenges with doing that. And what we hadn't realized was that this person actually had an interest and expertise in how to solve these very difficult technical problems. And we had never really considered talking with him about it. But once we got him in there, we were able to solve these problems in a matter of months versus the year that it had been taking to make it easier for people to get access to our software. And what that helped me do is sort of shift the team away from some of the work we were doing that was more on the line of professionals and how we help professionals be better at their jobs, and move more into how do we help people who are new to Unity, that are just getting started, and make it easier for them to get access, make it easier for them to learn. And that shift in job crafting for that one person on the team, and realizing the creativity that he has behind solving technical problems and the speed at which he's able to work, allowed us to very quickly pivot and shift up our team a little bit in focusing more on the early learner or someone earlier in their journey with Unity than someone who's already got a job and already in a space where they just are going to get better. And so I think that was an important aspect of job crafting. Actually helps with team crafting and can help with the vision of where we really need to be solving problems in order to unlock the potential that people have to be able to get to where they need to be. And that was an important aspect for us in looking at that shift.
What I hear you saying is that often the team members actually know the problems of the business almost more intimately than you may at times, and they've got a passion to focus on driving value and solving it, and how they think about redesigning their role to solve those problems is actually how you think about reconstructing your work environment to be able to support job crafting. Is that the right
Absolutely.
way? Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true. I think it's also making sure to listen to the team to figure out what exactly people's passions are that they may not be talking about because it's not relevant to what they're currently working on. And so how do we extract that and create an environment, honestly, within the team that allows for people to be able to job craft, to be able to speak about what the problems they want to solve and roles they may want to take on, even if it's not their current place.
Thank you. So, another question for both of you. For people who are in a position where they actually don't get any signals that job crafting is okay for them, maybe Kevin, where you were when you were running your own nonprofit and you were about to make a shift to a foundation. I'm sure none of your grantees or none of your grant partners actually wanted you to move on from being the founder and the CEO of your own organization. How did you go about job crafting in an environment where it may not have been as supported?
Yeah, and I think reshaping your role does not always require like big and bold ideas. You have to signal that in any means. What if you have like a manager or a supervisor who is resistant? I think you can change that dynamic. It's easy to find like comfort and security in the status quo as well. Like I get that people may sometimes feel resistant, and so one thing I did was I started small, learned a new skill, attended more networking events, taking initiative to gain more leadership experience as well by offering to pilot a new event or a new program. Overall, I'd say that a initiative rarely goes unnoticed from my experience. So despite like resistance, I was always keen on really exploring my own agency when it comes to job crafting. And I knew that by taking initiative and being creative about my own experience of both my personal growth and professional development, that whether I knew it or not, the job that lends itself next would be significantly due to the work that I put in. And so, despite like the fear of failure and like resistance from my board, like I knew I wanted to constantly evolve my career, even though I was already in a nonprofit leadership position.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that the little steps that you mentioned of the networking events and the research, I think starts to give you a sense of confidence on
Mm.
how to have that agency and navigate the landscape. Anuja, what about you? What advice would you give to somebody who may not feel like their environment supports this?
I completely agree with Kevin. Starting small, taking initiative are two key elements. I would say sometimes it's okay to do it volunteer in order to be able to gain whatever experience or network that you don't actually have right now. I can give an example from my early in my career, wanted to get into an education space, but I had no connections and no understanding of what that could mean, nor did I have any understanding of what that job would be. But what I did do is I went and I found an education department at the college I was working at and I asked to volunteer doing anything they wanted. And it was, writing a newsletter. And so that type of work, even though it wasn't necessarily the job that I wanted or work that was going to pay me, because I had to do something else in order to be able to earn money. What it did give me is it gave me access to people who would eventually be able to hire me and understand a bit more about the type of work that I might be able to do. And so I think that when in environments where it's not necessarily set up for you, sometimes finding other people, whether it's in that organization or other organizations, that might give you access to doing some of the work that will open up your network and help you build more people into your community that will then recognize the type of work you do and the initiative that you have. It'll help you in figuring out then, how do you start to craft that new job for yourself? And what is the language of that job? What does it mean? All of that will help you understand how you can take that next step.
Those are two great tips. If you don't have exposure, find volunteer opportunities where you can start donating your time and learning, and then always be building your community and asking your community for advice on how to job craft if you feel like you're in an environment that doesn't support it. So, Kevin, you get to work with a lot of our grantee partners who are doing incredibly innovative work at the intersection of education and workforce and technology. So, what advice do you have for them in how they are communicating job crafting and supporting people moving into new roles and different roles?
Yes, something that comes to mind for me is the longer a team or organization or program that's been in place, some for decades, it's easy to develop bureaucracies in place. And so you're used to sticking to the status quo, you're resistant to change, and it's often critical for especially new employees to feel like they're in a space that welcomes new ideas, for you to feel empowered and to be able to go bold on your vision for how to improve your program, team, or company. And so that's my advice, is to really think of your team or program as if it was a startup almost, to give your employees the flexibility to be able to uh, come up with new ideas, to have agency and autonomy. The sort of keyword that I shared earlier is, I feel like from my experience, I had the privilege of working under managers such as yourself, who I felt like on my first month at Unity told me that that you were expecting me to really own the grant strategy, and I felt very empowered just right off the bat to do almost a complete overhaul of the way we manage our partnerships, how we give, what we gave to, and that really helped me blossom in my role, but also help us shape the success of our grant initiatives over these past few years.
So, really never lose the entrepreneurial spirit, no matter what size your organization is or what problem you're trying to solve, and focus on empowering. And from that problem solving and empowerment comes job crafting.
Yes.
Anuja, you have in the book, you also spoke a lot about bias in the hiring process. Could you talk through maybe one of the hires you've made or an experience you've personally had in which, by putting aside bias, which all of us have as humans, you were able to make a great hire or have a breakthrough yourself in your own career?
Yeah, as you said, bias is really hard to set aside. As much as we try to keep our minds open when we're in the hiring process, it's difficult to sort of take all of it out, because we all come with different backgrounds and experiences that have shaped how we're thinking about the world. One of the big things that I believe is that when we've been doing hiring, we usually have our recruiting department go out and they scour for resumes and they're looking for specific skills. And one of the ways that I've worked with our recruiting department is I've asked them, not necessarily to be looking for the specific skills. Obviously, some of that experience, whether we're hiring for a technical role or whether we're hiring for a learning role, having some of that is important, but also looking at when they do their interview, how does the person present themselves? Are they a problem solver? What are those durable skills that really show up in either in between the lines of their resume or in the conversation that they have? Those are really important because those are the people who can job craft, who can really take shape and take ownership of what they're doing. While we may have a job that we've described that we think we need, coming back to sort of the crafting of the job and the crafting of the team, sometimes there's things that we don't see that we actually do need for the team to be impactful. And somebody who's got really great durable skills that can help see outside the bounds of their role will help us continue to craft the team even more. So one specific example I had is there was somebody randomly who reached out to me on LinkedIn, had no connection to her. She just looked at my background and said, "Oh, I'd really like to talk to you and understand. I've never worked for a for-profit company. I've, never done any kind of work in that space to have a background, and I want to move into that." So I took a call with her. What was interesting to me is how she thought about problem solving and learning, and whether that was in a nonprofit environment that she was in, or an academic environment, or a corporate environment. Those skills are really important for the work that we were doing. It caused me to put her in the running for a job that no one looking at her resume would have said, yes, this is someone who's a candidate. And it helped us bring someone who brought a really fresh perspective to learning, and she thrived and went on to do other things at other companies in the corporate space. But it was really about, for her, she hadn't had any experience in this, and so felt that she wouldn't be able to get into it unless she figured out how to do it. But really, it was those underlying skills she had that made it important to be able to hire her and bring her into the team.
So you actually had somebody cold call reach out to you for an informational interview, and you ended up hiring them as a
Yes.
result of their initiative.
Exactly. Exactly. It gave me a chance to look beyond the resume and see that there was, there was a lot more in there that was relevant to the work that we needed to do, and the way that she approached things was going to help her be a strong problem solver, and that was important.
You are the 1 in 12. Just a reminder, the research says that if you're looking for a job opportunity, every 1 in 12 informational interviews ends up getting you hired. But if you're just dropping your resume into, a bucket, it's 1 in 200.
Yeah.
So thanks for validating that with your personal hiring story. Speaking of community and cold calling and reaching out to build network, perhaps you can each close us out with just how in job crafting you've really leveraged your community and what a personal experience has been like for you. Kevin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to. And building off of what Anuja shared, I love that example. Mentors, peers, communities play such a critical role in helping us job craft. They share valuable career insights. They help us stay accountable for our skill building and goal setting. And they advocate for our work because they keep a pulse check into how we work. I had the privilege of working with some really amazing mentors and communities, and they gave me valuable referrals. And sometimes I share with a lot of my mentees now that even for like cold calling, it's extremely critical to your job crafting process because oftentimes it leads to uh, lifelong mentorships. It helps you get, again, insight into careers that you might not otherwise know about. And one added benefit that I often share is as you're building your network and community, I've had job offers before where simply having the ability to name drop all the major leaders and players in the space was an impressive feat on its own. And having professionals of a lot of different backgrounds and merits vouch for your work is truly a testament as well that goes beyond the skill building and the job crafting as well. It's immensely important to build community and identify mentors.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kevin. Anuja, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I completely agree 100% with everything you've said, Kevin. I think that it's important to continue to build your community as well. There's the people that you've encountered in your professional life or even in personal activities that you may have that all represent different kinds of roles and jobs who can give you different perspectives. But continuing to grow that and find other folks that will give you different kinds of perspectives, because especially if you think beyond the core network that you have and the people maybe one radius out from them, they will have a perspective on you and your skills, not because they know you so well, but because they're kind of looking at you from the outside. And so making sure that you are out there finding those different people with those different perspectives, whether they're in your field or not in your field, can always give you insight into not only areas and skills that you could build, but how to represent yourself and how to think about where you want to go next and what that crafting could end up looking like, which could be very different than if you just stuck with the few, with the people that you already know. So I think it's always important with that network to continue to grow it and help it flourish, because you'll always find new perspectives that come in to help you out.
Great way to end. Continue building that community. It's a lifelong process. Thank you, Kevin and Anuja, so much. It was wonderful to spend time with you today and to also get more of your learnings in the Career Game Loop book. Looking forward to hearing the conversations. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.